Hi, everyone, and we have with us Aya Caspi. Aya is a nonviolent communication trainer and a consultant who works with organizations and parent education. Is that correct, Aya?
Among other things, yes.
Among other things. I I opened some documents. I didn't open your bio. Um, Thank you, Aya, for being here and for having this conversation.
My pleasure, Alice. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. So, um, why don't we start? Just tell us about your work with the things I named, the things I didn't name. What do you do?
Yeah, happy to. I've been sharing the work of nonviolent communication for the past 17 years since I arrived to the US from Israel, where I grew up. Um, I've been on this spiritual journey, looking for how to love your neighbor as they self, as we are taught in Judaism, and not seeing any living examples of that in my country of birth and pretty much elsewhere until I was introduced to nonviolent communication. And I was so excited about this attempt to bring the principles of nonviolence into the way we communicate, because it made so much sense that if I wanted to learn a new consciousness, I would need to learn a new language. And I've been teaching internationally, online classes, retreats, doing mediations, working a lot with parents, really focused on social change and transformation.
Yeah, and um, and so you mentioned that you grew up in Israel and you have a commitment to peace. How has that been? Yeah, how has that played out for you? Kind of the tension between, or like, you know, Israel in some ways is a country that's been at war since before its inception. So, how have you what paradoxes have you seen and how have you reconciled them?
Well, my first memory in life is the siren and
Mm,
going down to the shelter with my mother. So that created an impression. Um, the paradox are that there is war all the time and a lot of death and a lot of mourning and a lot of violence, and then there is this longing for peace and a longing for love and reconciliation. It's in the culture, it's in the songs. Um and how did I reconcile it? It created a lot of tension inside of me. I recognized pretty early that I didn't know how to love myself. That was my first piece, to try to figure that out before
mm,
I can even think about loving others. And it just took me on a journey studying many teachings, Buddhism, philosophy in the University of Tel Aviv. But until I was introduced to NVC, I really couldn't reconcile it. That was the first moment where I was given a tool that showed me what to say, actually, in the moment of conflict to manifest love for self and other at the same time.
mm,
Before that, it was all just either or. I either like had to prioritize myself and my needs and my truth over other people, or drop myself, give myself up. So it was really that moment, which was a big moment in my life. And here we are
mhm,
17 years later.
mm. Yeah, that's around the time I think I just actually discovered nonviolent communication before you. I discovered it in 18 years ago. And it sounds like you dove into it perhaps a bit more thoroughly than me.
Immediately.
Yeah.
It was very immediate. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm kind of dilemmaing between, tell us some general examples or dive into the most sort of famous and interesting example that happened recently. So let's go there. So a number of months ago, maybe about a year ago even, you were invited as an Israeli, who's interested in peace, as someone with nonviolent communication skills, to be part of a conversation about the war in Gaza, which, you know, has now been going on for almost 14 months, but at that point had been just a few months. And you ended up having a bigger and different role than you expected. Will you share with our audience what happened?
Yes. I mean, when I received this invitation, I already had a little bit of a dread because I know when you put people in a room to talk about a topic like this, it's unlikely to go smoothly. But I was not there at the you know, at a facilitator capacity. I was a guest on a panel with two other people and a facilitator. And about 30 minutes into the panel, you know, the room was just about to explode. Particularly, there was this person who was just doing this all the time, like wanting to speak. And he was just, you know, when are you going to talk about the genocide? And you know, this discussion is not, you know, going the way I would like. And it was, you know, there was this polarized situation of pro-Palestinians and pro-Israelis. And the facilitators were trying to do the things that facilitators tend to do, like saying things like, I'm sorry that you feel this way. We have, you know, on the agenda, we're gonna get to the other side of things, offering a lot of education. But the responses just seems to made it worse, and things got even more tense and more polarized. So they just asked me to intervene in my capacity as an NBC trainer and try to help kind of bring people together. And I was, you know, scared. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I just did because it's almost like I've been like preparing all my life for this moment. Yeah, like, okay, I've got this. I've got these tools. I just gonna listen empathically. I don't have to agree with anyone. I don't have to educate anyone. I don't have, it's also not my job to fix this. I'm just gonna try to bring a presence that supports something new to happen. And it worked. It really, really worked. And what was amazing is that this event was recorded because it was in Zoom, because one of the panelists was remote. And then they also agreed for me to create an educational video out of it, which was another miracle. And I'm very grateful for that. And I got quite a bit of responses. And as a result, the door opened to me to do some work in the region, which I've been doing since more intensely than before.
Some work in Israel-Palestine?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I'm very curious about that. I'll ask that next, but I'm going to draw out a few things I heard. Well, actually, something that really, really struck me is how you said you were scared, but you realized that every moment has been leading to this. I had experiences like that in the Occupy movement, where I did a lot of mediation, a lot of de-escalation. Even the day before we were evicted, somebody brought a gun to the site. And my partner at the time was trained in restorative justice, and I was certified in nonviolent communication mediation. And we had a meeting. We did not want to deal with this, but you know, the person who brought a gun was our friend, and we were the mediation team. We were called late at night. We'd gone home. We were called back to the camp, and we had a conversation between the person who'd brought the gun and the person who'd shown it to as a veiled threat that ended in them hugging.
Wow.
And it didn't save the camp, unfortunately. And it could have, or rather, if the police had not gotten involved, our community had been restored. And yeah, we get these skills and we use them in low stakes, medium stakes, we forget to use them. And then a higher stakes situation comes up, and so grateful to have it.
Yeah, and there's nothing like it, like that experience, being part of that experience of transformation, where we reunite in our shared humanity. That is something that gives me a lot of energy.
Mm, that's really remarkable. The other thing that I, that I wanted to draw out and that I got from watching the video is, like, you kind of mentioned the pitfalls, the things that we think we're supposed to do, trying to be neutral, giving information. Why do those fail, and what does work?
Right. So one of the things that is very clear, and you see this in the video, that people think, oh, if I just tell you what is the definition for genocide, you will see that it is a genocide and that will be it. You will be converted. Well, it doesn't work. And it's so hard to integrate this piece that people need to be heard and understood and be met where they're at first. And then when we build trust with them, that we're not trying to convert them and convince them, they might be open to hear a different position. It's actually, I feel that people naturally would become curious to hear once they feel heard and understood. There is something about our communication in the way that we are trained to communicate that contributes to loss of trust. When I'm trying to convince you or demand you to change, or when I judge, that's another, like, a big piece of implying wrongness. Like, I'm in pain, something you say hurts me, and I'm trying to communicate my pain in a way that imply wrongness on your behalf, like you're an idiot, you have no empathy. That creates more separation and more polarization. And for some reason, we keep doing those things, anticipating that that will affect change, but it's highly ineffective. So what helps to really get grounded, that if I'm trying to understand someone, it doesn't mean that I agree with them. It doesn't mean that I may not even, like, use force to stop them if I think that they're doing something that is really harmful. It just means that I'm opening myself to try to connect with what's important to this person. And NVC has this radical assumption of innocence that says that everything human beings are doing or saying is an attempt to meet one or more of the universal human needs, no different than my own. So when I try to listen, I listen to that thing that matters to the other person. It's not what they want me to do or not to do, or their position. It's what they're motivated by. In that case, it was like a need for justice or freedom or safety, something that I can resonate with, that I have too. And when I do that, it both delivers that quality of understanding that opens people's hearts and builds trust. It also changes me, because it helps me transform the enemy image of the other person, see their humanity, and be changed and moved by their needs that are no different than my own.
Yeah. I don't know if there was a cattail in the camera, but yeah, there is.
I didn't notice it.
And it really was very special in the video, in that meeting, where you gave one of the people in the polarized dialogue the opportunity to guess what was important to the other person, and it impacted both of them. Can you share about what happened there?
Yes, it was a sequence where I was hearing or reflecting what I heard from one of the people who was the person who was like raising the hand like this and saying there is a genocide. What are you talking about? Why are you not talking about the elephant in the room? Was very agitated. And I told him upfront, me reflecting and trying to understand doesn't mean that I agree exactly with your position, but it's important to me to hear you and take it in. And I was modeling doing that. And he was completely like changed by it. His tone of voice, his agitation, he became more present. And then I invited him to listen to the other person who was pro-Israel position, who was arguing that this is not a genocide, to try to hear what she was saying. And he did. He actually did it pretty like calmly and thoroughly. And for everyone to witness that, suddenly these people were walking towards each other versus like away from each other. And there was another powerful moment there where the person who was pro-Israeli was saying, but Jewish people need a safe place to live. If you call like free Palestine, what are you saying? Where are Jewish people are going to live, and are they going to be safe? And I paused her and I said, let's take a poll and ask in the audience, who wants all Jewish people to have safety and have a safe place to live? And everyone raised their hand. It was such a powerful moment. Everyone raised their hand. And then I asked the same question, who wants Palestinians to have safety? And everyone raised their hand, including her. So people could really see that at the need level, there's no conflict. Conflict, like Marshall Rosenberg suggested, happens at the level of strategies, the different ways by which we propose to meet our needs. And it sounds simple and maybe simplifying. I know the complexity of the situation. I'm not trying to, simplify it. I also know that there is some magic that happens when we connect in this way and reclaim trust, that our brains then become available in some magical way to search for solutions that work for all, to collaborate. And that's really the main purpose. It's not, yes, people say, oh, we just give empathy, but that's not going to solve the world problems. But, even Martin Luther King said that love and empathy for me is a manifestation of love, is a key for solving the problems of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are willing to focus on our connection and suspend for a second, suspend the solution part, focus on reestablishing trust. Once we get to that place of connection, suddenly there is access to creativity that maybe was not there before. And I know that our human brains are designed to solve problems, but we cannot focus on that if we don't trust that we matter, and we don't trust that we are seen, and we don't trust that we are being heard. So that's the obstacle.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's something like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If we don't have safety or trust safety in the moment, we're not available for other levels of thinking. It's like our lower brain is ruling the day.
Yeah. I mean, we are interdependent. So our well-being and the well-being of others is one and the same. And when some people's well-being is being prioritized, or there are other people's well-being, then the people who are deprioritized are not going to trust that their needs matter. And then they're going to have like resentment and distrust. And so it's going to be hard to collaborate. I mean, this seems to me so like obvious, like to reach sustainable peace, we will need to find a way to care for everyone, for all life, for all needs.
That is obvious. And when our brains are taking care of ourselves, are on a really, really foundational level, we can't go there yet.
Right. Yes. And that's why this stretch, which for me is spiritual, to try to listen to what is scary for me, to try to listen to what I don't agree with. That is where I build this capacity to care for the whole, and see that caring for others actually is gonna be caring for myself too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell us about the work that you've been doing in Israel and Palestine.
So after that video, I got some requests from actually also in the US, but from there specifically, there was someone who, like a group of activists, who reached out and said they want to create this group that will be very diverse. It will include Orthodox Jews and secular Jews and Palestinians both who live inside Israel and in the West Bank. We didn't have people from Gaza. And I was like, wow, this is like, right. This is like my dream, because from the very first moment when I was introduced to nonviolent communication, I wanted to bring this to the region and try and contribute, because I've been privileged to live here and get away from that intensity and focus on learning and growth. It's not something that I know that I could do if I was still there. It's hard to explain how it affects our brain and nervous systems to be in that kind of situation, in terms of the level of fear and intensity. And so I immediately said yes. We just finished this 10-week series. It's not the end of it. We're going to continue and upscale it. But we just use these tools to have these very intense conversations about what's happening there. And I'll just give you one example. I was facilitating this dialogue between one of the Orthodox Jews and the Palestinian person, who's like inspiring that he was just willing to sit there and participate in a dialogue like this, given all the impacts. And he was sharing about how this approach of humiliating Palestinians, how it affects the escalation, and how it just does the opposite. When people don't experience having dignity or being able to meet their basic needs, they get so much more extreme in hatred and willingness to be violent. And the person who was listening after this dialogue, the Orthodox Jew said that he really changed his mind as a result, because before that he thought that actually this approach of being very harsh and even using humiliation will cause Palestinians to give up armed fight. And he realized that's not the case as a result. He really got it, that it's doing the opposite. And for me, this is one of the miracles that can happen when we truly open to listen in this way. We're actually able to take in new information that we could not take in before, because we are just listening to people who are thinking like we do.
Or having a debate and pushing against it.
Or having a debate and trying to convince. So this was just one example of a shift. Yeah, it's a small shift. It's one person.
One person. Yeah.
Yes, but it demonstrates the possibility. And so this group is now planning to create a project that will involve many more people. And it's quite a new path to even understand how to bring this in a big scale. And another thing that is happening is there is a fundraising campaign that is now being held for 40 peace organizations in Israel who want to get trained in NVC, because one of the things that happen with social change movements, including in Israel, is that they use a language and communication that tends to perpetuate separation and polarization, even when the intention is to bring people together and bring understanding and bring transformation. Our language kind of doesn't do a good service for this. There is a gap between the intention and the impact. So they want to learn how to express themselves in a way that is more aligned with nonviolence in service of their pledge and their goals. Oh, you're muted.
I saw that. We're getting close to the end of our interview. So there's two questions that I ask everybody at the end of each interview. One is, what do you offer people who know that they're meant to make a difference, but they're not clear on what is theirs to do? You know, you've got this great story of you discovered NBC and you were like, that's it. And yeah, what would you say to people who are on the journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am quite amazed by my own journey. And really, I came to this country, I didn't know one person. And I just followed my heart, followed my passion. It's a very clear thing that also when we do things that are so alive for us and give us so much meaning, we tend to be like really also talented in those things. So I know this whole like programming of our conditioning is doing the opposite, kind of training us to disconnect from ourselves and to disconnect from our heart. And there is a quality of like reclaiming some sort of like innocence and almost naivete in trusting ourselves that if we just follow what we love, Rumi has this saying, let the things we love be what we do. And cultivate the fire of our longing. Really a fire that takes us there step by step. Like I said, this moment that I was planning for or preparing for all my life, suddenly it arrives. It's so the minimum step, you start with the minimum step, that is the next step on my journey, and saying yes to what I'm scared of. That's another like Rumi quote, live where you fear to live. I've taken that practice to say yes, not overstretch my capacity, but live in that kind of opportunity zone where I'm outside of my comfort zone and doing things, even though I have these all things in my head that how, the fear of being judged and it's never going to work and I'm going to be seen as naive or whatever. Kind of choosing from the fire within and risking. It involves the, walking the path of discomfort and growing my capacity to be with discomfort and getting tons of support. I have a lot of community, a lot of just daily support systems to make sure that we have the resources, the internal resources to stretch.
No, that's great. That is amazing. And then the last question is, tell everybody about the free gift you're offering them.
My free gift is this inspiring video that I shared about in this talk. It's about 20-minute video, and I think it's kind of a unique format because it not only shows what happens, but it's edited in a way that I pause and I explain what the facilitators are doing, why it's not working, what I am doing, and why it is working. And so it's very specific in showing the skills. And it's about 20-minute video that my son, who's studying filmmaking in LA, helped me do. So I'm very grateful for him.
Well, that's wonderful. 'Cause I watched the video, it's very inspiring. And I think for people who have some de-escalation skills or listening skills, it's going to give you ideas of what you can do next time.
Yeah.
You're
And
witnessing
instead of just
conflict.
right. And instead of just seeing some magic that is inspirational, it actually breaks it into here is, how you do this magic.
Great, great. And you're also providing a link for people to opt into your website. Is that right? Or will they?
Yes, my mailing list, my website. I have tons of
That's what I
resources
meant.
on my
Opt into
website.
your mailing list. Great.
Yes.
So I think we're almost exactly at the 30-minute mark. Really wonderful conversation, Aya. Thank you for sharing your story and your wisdom and your work with all of us.
My pleasure, Alice. Thank you for all the work you're doing. And I hope many will be inspired to join us.
I hope so too.